Yamuna Prabhupada ki jai, ISKCON New Govardhana ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, all glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees, all glories to Shiva and Shiva. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 8, text number 20. It has no purport, so I'll read 21 as well. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tamasya Pade Viratmasragam. Vichintvato Bhut Samoham Strinemi. Yodehi Bhajan. Yodehi Bhajan Bhayam Hirayanaha. Yodehi Bhajan Bhayam Harikshanaut Yayo Ajashaheti. Tamasya Pade Viratmasagam. Vichimpato Bhut Sumaham Strinemi. Yodehi Bhajan Bhayam Hirayanaha. Harikshanaut Yoya Ajashaheti. Tamasya Pade Viratmasagam. Vichimpato Bhut Sumaham Strinemi. Yodehi Bhajan Bhayam Hirayanaha. Harikshanaut Yayo Ajashaheti. Word for word, Tamasi Apare. Because of an ignorant way of searching. Vidura, O Vidura, Atmashagam, the cause of his creation. Vichimpataha, while contemplating. Abut, it so became. Sumahan, very great. Chinemahi, time of 3 dimensions. Yaha, which Dehibajam, of the embodied. Bhayam, fearfulness. Irayanaha, generating. Parikshanoti, diminishing the 100 years. Ayahu, duration of life. Ajasyaha, of the self-born. Hetihi, the will of eternal time. Translation by Divine Grace HG Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Hogadura, while searching in that way about his existence, Brahma reached his ultimate time, which is the eternal will in the hand of Vishnu, and which generates fear in the mind of the living entity, like the fear of death. Please repeat, Hogadura. While searching in that way about his existence, Brahma reached his ultimate time, which is the eternal will in the hand of Vishnu, and which generates fear in the mind of the living entity, like the fear of death. Just go on to 21. Thereafter, being unable to achieve the desired destination, he retired from such searching and came back again to the top of the lotus. Thus, controlling all objectives, he concentrated his mind on the Supreme Lord. The report by Srila Prabhupada. Samadhi involves concentrating the mind upon the supreme cause of all, even if one is unaware of whether his actual nature is personal, impersonal, or localized. Concentration of the mind on the Supreme is certainly a form of devotional service. To cease from personal sense endeavours and to concentrate on the Supreme Cause is a sign of self-surrender. And when self-surrender is present, that is a sure sign of devotional service. Each and every living entity needs to engage in devotional service to the Lord if he wishes to understand the ultimate cause of his existence. So this is Vidura Maitreya speaking. It keeps going on for many chapters still. But we're still on the subject of creation. So in the verse 20, which we've got on the board, it's a couple of interesting words that Maitreya is using. We have tamasi apareya, because of an ignorant way of searching. So why is it that Brahma's way of searching is considered ignorant? Anybody like to say?
Self-centered. It's like centered around him.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, anything else? Because he's on the lotus, he's appeared on the lotus flower, he's going up and down the stem trying to understand what's going on. And so Maitreya, he's saying this is an ignorant way of searching. So he's obviously not taking guidance, just in his own intellect. He's trying to understand what's going on. It's like if you're lost and there's so many people around, but you don't ask anybody. No, I'll find it my own way. But you'll just stay lost. That's the problem. So, so if you just ask somebody, who knows what's going on, then immediately you get, the right information, the right direction. So this is why Maitreya, he's referring to this tamasi. Tamasi means like tamagun, it's like ignorance. So he's trying to find his own way using his own intelligence. And another word, tri nemahi, is the time, is translated time of 3 dimensions. So what are the 3 dimensions of time that he's referring to? Past, present and future. Very good. So there's a name, one of Krishna's name is known as Tri Kalagyan. So it means one who knows the 3 types of time. So he's in the heart of every living entity. And he knows everything we've done in the past, he knows what we're doing now, and he knows what's going to happen in the future. So that's a lot of knowing, because basically there's unlimited souls in the material and spiritual sphere. Of course, he's super soul only in the hearts of the jivas in the material world. In the spiritual world, there's no need for super soul. But in the material world, he's he knows everything because he's everywhere. He's within the heart of every living entity. He's within every atom. He's between every atom. So therefore, he knows past, present, and future of every living entity. So this aspect of time mentions that Brahma reached his ultimate time, which is the eternal will in the hand of Vishnu, and which generates fear in the mind of the living entity, like the fear of death. So this word parikshanoti is translated as diminishing the 100 years. So in the Kali Yuga, generally it's understood that we can expect to live maximum 100 years. Of course, the average would be a little bit less, but generally that's the maximum. A few people go over. I was just reading some time ago. In the beginning of the Victorian era, early 1800s, the average life expectancy for a labourer was 19 years old. As they start working, there's child labour, start working at 5 or 6 years old, very dangerous factories or, out in the fields, and poor diet, lots of disease. So they had a short, miserable life. But the average office worker lived about 35 years. He was sort of indoors, so it was a little bit less harsh, but short life expectancy. So, but generally, Kali Yuga, at the end of Kali Yuga, it's mentioned that an old person would be considered 20 years old. So, not all of us is going to get a telegram from the king to congratulate us for being 100 years. But generally, so that's what refers to Parikshanoti, that this 100 years. So Brahma reached his ultimate time. So this eternal will in the hand of Vishnu, this is Sudarshan Chakra. So this represents the energy of time. And Prabhupada mentions in Bhagavad Gita that time is the impersonal energy of Krishna. So, these different scientists, they've got these different theories. Big Bang Theory, they say that time began after the explosion, but they don't say how it started. Why wasn't it there before? How did it actually start? There's a lot of speculation going, but Bhagavatam is very clear. Part one of Krishna's energies is time, and everything is created, maintained, and destroyed under the influence of that time. Like the 6 stages of the living entity of our body is basically birth, growth, maintenance, production of byproducts, dwindling, and death. So that's all going on under the influence of time. And in the Battle of Kurukshetra, initially Arjuna was quite reluctant to fight. And so Krishna says, all these soldiers are already going to die. By my influence, by the influence of time, they're already dead. So whether you fight or don't fight, they're going to have to give up their bodies. So in this way, he was telling Arjuna that you go and fight and be victorious, but if you don't fight still, don't think that you're going to save the lives of your, cousin brothers and your martial gurus, etc. So under the influence of time, everything is ultimately destroyed. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that time I am, destroyer of the worlds. So he's encouraging Arjuna that, they're all going to die. So, but you should, you follow my instruction, you'll get the benefit. If you don't follow still, they will die. And it's mentioned that during World War II, when they dropped the atomic bomb in Japan, the pilot of one of the planes, Oppenheimer, I think his name was, apparently he's recorded as quoting Bhagavad Gita as the bomb was going down, time I am, destroyer of the worlds. So Maitreya and Vidura, further on in this canto, chapter 10, Vidura, in the chapter of divisions of creation, Vidura inquires from Maitreya that, "O my Lord, O greatly learned sage, kindly describe eternal time, which is another form of the Supreme Lord, the wonderful actor. What are the symptoms of that eternal time? Please describe them to us in detail." So the answer to that question is further on. Prabhupada mentions in the purport that the complete universe is a manifestation of the varieties of entities, beginning from the atoms up to the gigantic universe itself. And all is under the control of the Supreme Lord in his form of kala, or time, or eternal time. The controlling time has different dimensions in relation to particular physical embodiments. There is a time for atomic dissolution and a time for the universal dissolution. So everything material is ultimately destroyed through this influence of Kala Shakti, influence of time. There is a time for the annihilation of the body of the human being, and there is a time for the annihilation of the universal body. Also, growth, development, and resultant actions all depend on the time factor. Vidura wanted to know in detail the different physical manifestations and their times of annihilations. So in Bhagavad Gita also, we have, Prabhupada mentions in the introduction, he says the Bhagavad Gita covers 5 different subject matters. So what are those 5? Anybody like to say? Ishvara, yes. Atma, Jiva, yep. Kala, yes. Bhakti is not, I mean, that's a general theme running through there, but not one of the specific 5 mentioned. Prakriti, material energy. Number 5. Karma, very good. So it's mentioned that 4 of those are eternal and 1 is temporary. So which is the temporary one? Karma, yes. So sometimes Prabhupada mentions that we might think that Prakriti, material energy, is temporary because, you know, the universe is manifested and after some time it's unmanifested. So isn't that temporary? But we understand that the material energy is never ultimately destroyed, that Prakriti is one of Krishna's energies. So it's never ultimately destroyed, but sometimes manifest and sometimes unmanifest. But so the universal creation is an ongoing activity. You know, there's creation, maintenance, dissolution. After some time, creation starts again. So in that way, Prakriti, it's eternal because it's one of Krishna's energies. But karma, we can annihilate our karma through devotional service. The influence of devotional service, we can annihilate that karmic reactions. So, so referring to this Sudarshan chakra, as I said, as a representation of time, in Bhagavatam 9.5.1, we're hearing that Sudarshan chakra, which is the origin of creation, is most dear to the Lord and has thousands of spokes. You know, we know, like in the 4-handed form, Vishnu, he has 4 different articles, so one of them is the chakra. So this Sudarshan chakra is the killer of the prowess of all other weapons because he's the supreme, his weapon is also supreme. The killer of darkness and the manifester of the prowess of devotional service. It is the means of establishing religious principles, and it is the killer of all religious activities. And Bhagavatam 5.24.14, just referring to the residents of the lower subterranean heavenly planets, mentions that they live very auspiciously and do not fear death from anything but death's established time, which is the effulgence of the Sudarshan chakra of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, but many, many different references to Sudarshan chakra as being the manifestation of Krishna's Kala Shakti or time influence. So in the purport to text 21, Prabhupada mentions in the purport that means that samadhi involves concentrating the mind upon the supreme cause of all, even if one is unaware of whether Krishna's actual nature is personal, impersonal, or localized. So lots of different yogic practices. So if you have any yoga students here, I presume you'd be familiar with samadhi. So it's one of the 8 stages of the Astanga yoga process. So Asta Anga, meaning 8 limbs. So beginning with yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dana, jhana, and samadhi. So in Bhagavad Gita, also there's a mention of yoga ladder, just to try to understand how everything fits together. So in Bhagavad Gita 6.3, in the translation, mentions for Krishna saying, for one who is a neophyte in the eightfold yoga system, work is said to be the means, and for one who is already elevated in yoga, cessation of material activities is said to be the means. So this is referring to, for one who is still materially attached, the Ashtanga yoga system may be suitable, at least for some time, because you're not able to, if they're not able to immediately take up devotional service, then mechanically engage in yoga practice, with the body and the mind. That may be more suitable, at least in the beginning. But nevertheless, there is so Prabhupada mentions in the purport that the process of linking oneself with the Supreme is called yoga. It may be compared to a ladder for attaining the topmost spiritual realization. This ladder begins from the lowest material condition of the living entity and rises up to the perfect self-realization in pure spiritual life. According to various elevations, different parts of the ladder are known by different names. So Zenara Prabhupada says that ladder begins from the lowest material condition of the living entity. So really the yoga ladder that is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita really starts from, in one sense, an elevated level, like Karma Kanda. Is the lowest rung, but Karma Kanda refers to one who's following their life according to regulated sense gratification based on, scriptural injunctions. So obviously many people, many in the human form of life, they're much lower. They're not even at that stage. But this would be the lowest stage of a jiva who's considered somewhat transcendental. It's like the lowest of the transcendental stage because their goal is heavenly planets. That's what they're aspiring for. So in other words, they're trying to uplift themselves from their present situation. So therefore, Prabhupada refers, this is the beginning of transcendental life, trying to uplift oneself. And above that is a Karma Yoga. So the goal of Karma Yoga is to work according to one's duty, but not being attached to the fruits of that duty. That's sort of generally divided into two categories, the Sakam Karma Yoga and Niskam Karma Yoga. So actually it's interesting that in the third canto, the demigods, the devas and the high heavenly planets are known as Sakam Bhaktas. So, in other words, they're definitely devotees, but they have a controlling propensity. So therefore, due to that combination, they're awarded the posts and the heavenly planets, but they're also, happy to enjoy, the heavenly delights like that. So, in many different religious traditions like Islam and Christianity, the goal is the heavenly planets. Where we just want to enjoy the fruits of heaven. So Sakam is the beginning of that Karma Yoga. Above that Nishkam Karma is that one is basically the same thing as Sakam, but Nishkam is on a higher level. That perhaps you could describe as Sakam is that you want to engage in some level of spiritual activity, but you want to do it according to your own understanding and your own desires. Whereas Nishkam is that you're happy to follow guidance from a spiritual guide. So it's a higher level. In other words, you're surrendering your desires and your will to a spiritual guide rather than just trying to, do it by yourself to some degree. And so above that, Jnana Yoga, speculative knowledge of Brahman. So philosophical speculation, sometimes known as neti philosophy, that trying to, with your mind, understand what's eternal and what's temporary, and with the idea of ultimately coming to the Supreme Person. But generally, Jnana Yogis, their goal is to merge into the Brahman, to the effulgence of Krishna. So they're not developing a personal relationship with Krishna himself, but they want to merge into that Brahman. And above that, as we mentioned, the Ashtanga Yoga, got that 8 different paths. Ultimately, the goal of Ashtanga Yoga is to realise, to connect with Super Soul within the heart. So generally, in that process, samadhi is like meditating on that forearm form within the heart. But above that, Bhakti Yoga. So loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord, Krishna. So this ladder is not that you have to start at the bottom, but you can start anywhere. And of course, that's based on generally our activities and our desires based on our previous life. It's said that one who is engaging devotional service in this life has engaged in lots of different pious activities, and but over and above that they have blessings of a saintly person. So therefore, Bhakti Yoga is all based on receiving blessings. And of course, it's very good to give blessings as well. The very basic form of blessing, we could say, is sending good thoughts to other people. That's like the basic of blessing. But otherwise, whenever you come to a saintly person, oh, Guru Maharaj, please bless us. So if the saintly person gives blessings, then Krishna is happy to reciprocate. So to engage in devotional service means we've received blessings from our previous life. And of course, lots of pious activity. So pious activity, or sometimes we talk about agata sakriti, meaning unknowingly performing pious activity. So whether we know we're doing it or whether we don't, the benefit is going to be there. So slowly, it's purifying our heart. It's like activities in the mode of goodness. And as we become more elevated life after life, Haladini Shakti, or Krishna's devotional energy manifested as personified as Srimati Radharani, that Haladini Shakti starts to infiltrate into the heart more and more, so that we begin to get a taste, and there's a higher realization there as we progress on spiritual life. So, one who takes up spiritual life may be able to immediately come to the topmost rung, Bhakti Yoga. But for others, they may be more attracted to, other levels. But it just depends on the, individual level that they've attained from previous activities. So, in the purport to verse 21, Prabhupada mentions to cease from personal sense endeavours and to concentrate on the supreme cause is a sign of self-surrender, and when self-surrender is present, that is a sure sign of devotional service. So, we hear this phrase, basically in wartime perhaps, that you're being overwhelmed by the enemy and you put your hands up or you wave the white flag, I surrender. So because there's 2 different types of surrender, there's conditioned surrender and unconditional surrender. So, maybe the warring parties will surrender as long as you agree to this and this. So that's conditioned. You're happy to surrender, but you want, you're trying to get something for yourself as well. The unconditional surrender is that, yes, I surrender I'm placing myself at your mercy, basically. So this is Bhakti Yoga, unconditional surrender, that we're trying to surrender to Krishna, but we're ideally not putting any conditions on that. I will surrender you to Krishna as long as I get this, this, and this. So, of course, in the beginning we are all conditioned to some degree, and generally, for most of us, to some degree or another, we're engaged in karma mishra bhakti. So, meaning it's mixed. Mishra means mixed. So we're wanting to engage in devotional service, but there's an element of trying to enjoy at the same time. So that's natural, that's normal in our beginning stage. But ultimately we want to get to the stage where it's pure bhakti. So pure bhakti means favourably engage in devotional service, free from the desire of karma and gyan, free from the desire of trying to enjoy the fruits, or from speculative, philosophical speculation. So, we see the histories of like Ramayana and with Kamsa, that they were enemy. They considered Krishna the enemy, but they were constantly thinking of Krishna, thinking he's going to be the cause of our death. Of course, of Ravana, it was Ramachandra. But so even though they were meditating on Ram or Krishna, they weren't engaged in favour of devotional service. But despite that, despite presenting themselves as enemies of the Supreme Person, still they got a type of liberation. So what to speak of somebody who's favourably engaged in devotional service? So you just see how merciful Krishna is, that even his enemies he gives liberation. And we know with, what's her name? Took the breast milk poison, Putana, that, she came with the idea of killing Krishna. So that's considered, that's not obviously not very good intention. But despite that, she engaged in the activity of giving her breast milk. In other words, giving her breast milk to Krishna. So that's the activity as a mother or a nurse, like that. So Krishna, he didn't see the intention. He just saw the action, that she's a demon trying to kill me, but she's trying to offer her breast milk. So therefore she was liberated. She was transferred to the spiritual world, almost like on the level of a mother or a nurse in the spiritual realm. So you see how merciful Krishna is like that. So even for his enemies. So therefore, as we said, for his devotees who are trying to worship favourably and engage in devotional service with love and surrender, we can only imagine how merciful Krishna is going to be to such personalities. So perhaps we'll end there. Thank you very much. If there's any questions or comments? Yes. Just take the mic. There's people living outside. Thank you. Yes.
Is it like possible to just love God and in a way like skip the lower limbs of yoga and still attain Krishna at the end of your life?
Yeah, definitely possible, because the yoga ladder, you can get onto the ladder at any point. But generally it's understood that if you're on the topmost level, you're more than likely gone through the lower levels in your previous life. Yeah. And now you're on that topmost level. Otherwise, it could be just causes mercy that Krishna, or a saintly person bestows so many blessings on you that straight away you're endowed with, desire to engage in devotional service.
That's kind of what you're saying about that lady with the breast milk. Like she's she's loving God and giving him something, so then she's liberated despite having like an ill intention and perhaps being in a lower level of consciousness or whatever.
Yeah. So he didn't see the intention, he just saw the action. The intention was to kill him, but the action was to give him breast milk. So he just saw the favourable side and not the unfavourable.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Should be on.
Is it?
Yep.
I just want a bit more explanation when we say karma is temporary. Karma is temporary.
Karma temporary, yeah.
Yeah, because I have also heard that you not only face the consequences of your karma of your previous life, you also kind of have the karma of your parents as well come along with you, and of course by your action you will be generating the karma. So in this scenario, how one can say karma is temporary?
Yeah. So karma refers to material action. It's a material action producing a material reaction. So, but if you're engaged in devotional service, spiritual action, that can burn away the karmic reactions that are due to come to you, and also the desire to engage in further material activities. So as mentioned, two different types of karma: prarabdha karma and aparabdha karma. So aparabdha karma is those reactions that are due to come to you, but you're not receiving them, the reaction at the moment. But prarabdha karma is what you're receiving right at the moment. So there's just two differentiations. So one is in a seed form and one is in a fructified form. But I mentioned devotional service is so powerful, it destroyed both of them. Yeah, so when we engage in material activity, it produces a seed, it's known as papam bijam, a sinful desire seed within the heart. So in other words, that seed, as it begins, it's watered by a continued material activities. That desire for material activities increases more and more. In other words, you're like a seed, it's starting to sprout. But devotional service is understood to be so powerful, it will even kill the seed that is causing us to engage in that activity. So in the beginning of the 6th canto, Maharaj Parikshit is speaking to Sukadeva Goswami, and he mentioned, Sukadeva Goswami said, all our activities as material reactions can be destroyed by prayaschitta or atonement. We do something bad, but then we do something in charity or, sacrifice or give, charity to somebody, and that negates that activity, that reaction. But Maharaj Parikshit, being very intelligent, he said, well, I understand what you're saying, but he used the analogy of an elephant when it takes bath, hati snan. The elephant takes bath in the river, and when it comes out, it throws dust on itself again. So Maharaj Parikshit said that atonement seems like that you wash yourself, but then the desire to engage in devotion in material activity still remains. And Sukadeva Goswami, basically, who was testing Maharaj Parikshit, said, yes, that's a very good point. Therefore, devotional service is required. That kills that papam bijam within the heart, that stops us engaging again and again in the same activities. Yeah? Okay. Yes. Oh, sorry. Yes, brother.
So I was just going to ask about the different types of yogas. If you said one of them was focusing on the forearm form in the heart. If that's the type form of Krishna, would that not also be devotional service? And also, say if you were to start with Bhakti Yoga, would it be better to start with Bhakti Yoga and you're not doing it in the purest form, or would it be best to kind of start like somewhere else on the ladder and work your way up to this?
Well, basically you're going to start where you are attracted to or had the credentials to. If somebody hasn't had any contact with spiritual life at all, they're not going to be attracted to go to the topmost, because just the qualifications and the credentials and the desire just isn't there, you know. It mentioned 4 types of people who come to spiritual life are those who are out of distress, those who are desiring wealth out of curiosity, and those who are desiring knowledge. So for most of us in Kali Yuga, we're coming out of stress. You know, we want to, you know, relieve our anxieties in this life, or maybe it's out of wealth. You know, we offer charity to the deities hoping we're going to get something back like that. But the person who is approaching Krishna out of desiring to get knowledge, that's on the topmost level, because you're wanting to connect and develop a relationship with Krishna himself. But that comes from previous lives. So you've already been through the other stages. It's just like you can say some people believe in God and some don't, and some say, I don't think this or I think that. But what's really happening there is due to our previous activities, in our previous life, desires, activities, and in this life, you know, who our parents were, what the environment is we grew up in, who we went to school, who are our friends, etc., etc., etc. All these influences are going to dictate what we do believe, rather than thinking we're freely deciding one way or another. But you're going to be influenced by all these sort of activities. So for you to be asking, where is it better to start? Naturally, you're going to be attracted in one place or another. If you try to jump to the topmost and you don't have the qualification for it, you're not going to be able to maintain that. You know, if you think, you know, I'm going to perform severe austerities, chant 64 rounds a day, eat once a day, take cold showers, etc., etc. Maybe for a little time you could do that, but very difficult to maintain that, because you just don't have that background of, you know, of pious activities basically to keep you going. But, you know, you're attracted to start wherever you're naturally situated, and that's the proper place to start, you know. Yeah, understand that? Okay. Thank you. Yes, Vaishnavi.
Thank you for the class. I have a reflection and a question. The reflection was in relation to the answer you gave, where sometimes it's causeless mercy, but most of the time it's from a previous life or even this life you've qualified yourself. I was just thinking about that other example when the king, he goes to the prison house and then he gives pardon to the people even though they're not qualified, so they're given amnesty. And I remember when Devamrita Swami was here, someone was asking, can you just get mercy, you know, because there's some devotees in Bhagavatam that just got mercy and straight away went off. And he said that's like a lottery system. We shouldn't depend on the lottery system. Most of us have to go through the process, whether in the previous life or this life, so you explain that. My question is, you mentioned that Krishna knows past, present and future. I just wanted you to explain again how the free will and that minute independence comes into, just to explain again, when Krishna knows past, present and future, but we still have that minute independence.
Yeah. So you're asking that we have free will, so how does Krishna know how we're going to use that free will in the future? So basically we can respond by saying that you could argue perhaps Krishna doesn't know exactly what we're going to do, but as soon as we decide, he's going to know also. You know, because he's within the heart, he knows us better than we know ourselves. So generally speaking, you know, I mean, say if somebody becomes a drunkard, drinking lots of alcohol, that the future's going to be quite dark. So anybody could predict that. But exactly all the minor details, you know, Krishna may not know exactly what we're going to choose, but as soon as we do choose, he's going to know. So it could be understood like that. But generally speaking, living entities have been living in this, this material world for time immemorial. It's not, there's so many different directions and paths and decisions that we can make that Krishna hasn't witnessed already. So, it's like you go to an expert doctor and you have something wrong with you and, you got no idea what it is. And the doctor, just from experience, he understands that due to these symptoms, it's going to be this. So Krishna is going to be the same also, that we shouldn't think that we're so unique that we're going to be doing something with Krishna that he's never encountered before. Yeah. So, and just on that reflection, I was thinking, maybe I've lost my train of thought. No, anyway, you had another question. It might come to me.
No, just when you answered that, then it just reminded me what Devamitra Swami was saying in relation to the free will. When someone's on an aeroplane and they're going to a certain destination, they still can choose whether, if they're in the first class, whether they can drink alcohol or take a walk or fight with someone. So thank you for that.
Sure. No, there's minute free will, within our parameters that we can act. It's like, a prisoner can choose to run on the spot in his cell or lie on the bed or lie on the floor, but he can't get out. So there's free will within the jail cell, but they can't release themselves. Actually, I know that reflection you mentioned, what I was thinking, that yes, the king could pardon the prisoner and let him out, so that causes mercy, but that doesn't mean that the prisoner's not going to re-offend. Being let out of the jail doesn't mean that the heart's now purified. So it causes mercy, but in a material situation, it doesn't purify the heart. But for Krishna, if he bestows his causes mercy, then everything, that purification is there as well. Yeah, okay. Anything else? Last question.
I was wondering if you could explain, because you mentioned that Sudarshan Chakra is time, as known as time, but I also know that he's like a devotee.
Yeah, it's, every piece of paraphernalia in Krishna's pastimes has a personal form, yes. Okay. So what was the question? Sorry?
So how is that devotee also time?
Well, Krishna can bestow his ability on anybody. We can say, it's like the government puts together a police force, and so one of the policemen is on the road and holding up his hand, and everybody has to stop. Because the whole weight of the government is behind him. If just some random guy jumps on the road and puts up their hand, they're just going to be carted off, He's just causing chaos. But if an authorised person, so in other words, the government is empowering that police officer. So in the same way, Krishna can empower anybody with any of his upadhis or energies like that, like a Shaktavesh avatar. Shaktavesh avatar is a jiva, but they are empowered to act on behalf of Krishna, like Narada Muni. He's empowered to act. He's not Krishna himself, but he's empowered to act on Krishna's behalf. So Sudarshan Chakra or any of these types of paraphernalia, they can be empowered to act on Krishna's behalf. Okay. All right, thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam.